and welcome. My name is Chris Shelton, coming to you from a beautiful day in sunny San Jose, California, the heart of Silicon Valley, coming to you with your DIY Home Remedies guide to health, happiness, and healing transformations. Today what I talk about is the D word. What is the D word? No, we're not talking about the double D, like delicious and delightful. The D word, and what is that? That's depression. Did you know that depression affects millions of Americans across the country, and so many people suffer from it, and a lot of people don't even talk about it. You know, unfortunately, the mental health system is not set up, has never been set up to really deal with mental health, and that's really an unfortunate thing. That's one of the things I love about Qigong, because Qigong can give you the tools necessary in order to rectify the imbalances that actually show up as disease, and in this case, depression. Okay, so there's different types of depression, and depending on what type of depression it is depending on what organ that affects. What we're talking about today is depression, severe depression or mild depression, where you don't feel like getting out of bed and you don't have any energy or any motivation and drive. Now there are conditions like manic depression, depersonalization disorders, and manic disorders or bipolar disorders. Now we'll get into those videos at a different date, but today I'm really just talking about depression, which, by the way, depression a lot of times is the precursor or the underline for those other more major mental emotional disorders. Okay, so I myself have suffered with depression years ago before I started practicing Qigong, and I know what it feels like. So I can sympathize with you, anybody watching this video that is suffering from depression. I know what it feels like when somebody says to me, Chris, I do not feel good. And for those of you that have never had depression and somebody says, I'm depressed, I do not feel good, it's worse, far worse than what it feels like to have the flu, worse than having body aches. This is much deeper. It's almost like it hits the depths of your soul. So my heart goes out to you if you're suffering from depression, and especially right now with what's going on around the world and in our media, in the news media, there's a lot of depression going on. And right now, because of this pandemic, when this video was shot, this pandemic, unfortunately, has forced situations which are unnatural for human beings. Number one, first and foremost, having a mask over your face to where you can't see what the person's expression is. Yes, you can see their eyes, but you can't see their expression. When people have to walk 10 feet around you just because they're so afraid of catching something. Or another thing too, being isolated. We are creatures of community. No different than animals. We are creatures of community. So this idea of being isolated and not being able to be around other people is actually damaging to our mental emotional well-being. So it's not natural. So if you're feeling depressed right now, my heart goes out to you, and my goal is that by the time you finish watching this video, you have a deeper understanding of what depression is, what causes it, and then what remedies can we utilize in order to help to rectify it. Okay, so what organ systems are affected? Well, first and foremost is the liver. The liver is a controller of blood, and the liver plays a big role. And the reason why is that when we have anger and resentment and old anger, and we carry it around for a long time and don't express it appropriately, that actually causes the blood of the liver to stagnate, which then the heart doesn't get the nourishment that it needs, which then the mind becomes weak. So the liver is the number one culprit. We can also look at the kidneys too. The kidneys also can be, as a result of being deficient, burning the candles at both ends, too much stress, PTSD, being a part of something or witnessing something that's very disturbing to you. Too much drugs or alcohol also will deplete the kidney essence of your body. So the kidneys, when they are not strong enough, then they can't nurture the heart either, because the heart and kidneys need to work together to help to create the proper formulation between the water element of the kidneys and the fire element of the heart to produce the steam, which is the qi, which circulates around the body. Now, obviously, the heart is the emperor, empress of the body, so we always have to look at the heart too, because the heart is really going to dictate how much of an emotion is going to be expressed or suppressed. And did you know that you could tell if a person's spirit is cut off or they're suffering from severe mental illness by looking at their eyes? Because they have a saying that the heart opens up into the eyes, and you could tell the spirit or the strength of the spirit by how bright and sparkly those eyes are. So if they're dull and not sparkly, kind of gray, then you know that there's a blockage within the heart orifices itself, which then the mind's not getting the nourishment that it needs. But the other organ too, which closely is interconnected with the heart, is the lungs. So if you're somebody who just lost a loved one, maybe you're grieving because you're not getting that physical touch in that community like we're all supposed to have. Or maybe you just lost a loved one. Maybe one of your pets just passed away during this whole thing. You know, when we have that grief is good because we need to feel what's going on. When we have that attachment, it's being able to process and work through it. But sometimes if we don't work through it and we try to shove it down, it actually can cause the qi of the chest, also referred to as the zong qi, to become stagnant as well too. So we don't want this to happen either. Okay, so what can we do? Well, first and foremost, if you can, get outside, go for a walk. Especially in the sun, because if we're stuck indoors, guess what? We're not getting vitamin D. And not only is vitamin D good for the immune system and our lymphatic system and helping with the turnover of our cells, but guess what? It also helps with our mood too. And 9 times out of 10, people are very deficient in vitamin D, especially right now if you're somebody who's stuck indoors during this quarantine. On average, most people will take 1,000 to 2,000 IUs of vitamin D. You know, you don't get blood toxicity, they say, until 54,000 IUs of vitamin D. My wife and myself, we take about 9,000 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D almost every day. And I would talk to your healthcare provider first to make sure that that's not too much. But because we tend to go, we really push ourselves. And sometimes we're really stuck inside a lot because we are so busy serving customers and clients. We don't get a chance to get outside. So a lot of times, people are deficient in vitamin D and they don't really realize it, okay? Other things too is your diet. Well, let's look at our diet. If you're eating too much greasy, fatty, fried food, too much carbs and sugar, breads and pastas, those types of things, well, those sugars actually congest the gallbladder and the liver, which then congests the stomach, which then congests the spleen, makes it weak, which then the spleen is partly responsible for producing blood. So then guess what? This also is a contributor too. Another one is too much alcohol. Now, it's one thing to have 1 or 2 drinks a night if it just helps you take the edge off and you feel good and it has no negative side effects for you or it doesn't create any health problems for you. But if you're finding that you're needing this alcohol in order to get through the day or to get through the night because you're feeling down, then we need to really look at that. We're going to do a video on alcoholism and addiction later on as well too. But we really need to look at that and say, do I need help? Because there are systems out there that have been proven to help people that are suffering from alcohol and drug abuse. And actually right now, because of this quarantine, quite honestly, alcohol and the abuse of substances is actually on the increase right now. So is suicides too. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are exercising. We want to make sure that we're drinking enough room temperature water, adding a little bit of lime or lemon into that. So we make sure that we're hydrating the cells of the blood, making sure our blood is strong. Because if our blood is strong, then our mind is strong as well too. So making sure to eat the right food. And going back to that alcohol again, you know, one thing about it is that it's a short-term stimulant, but then it actually creates depression. And if you actually suffer from depression, will make the depression even worse. So that short-term high is always followed by pain and suffering. Okay, so really looking out for that as well. We want you to eat foods. Right now, this is a good time. It's nice, like right now outside is when we film this, about 98 degrees. Salads are okay. I personally don't really care for iceberg lettuce, but I do like kale and spinach salads. You can put goji berries in there. You can put pine nuts in there. They're very good for you. Fresh berries, chia seeds. You could go ahead and use unsalted sunflower seeds. Those are great anti-inflammatories. You can make your own salad dressing. For example, some flaxseed oil, which is very good for your spleen and your pancreas, mixed with some balsamic vinegar to taste. Okay, so this would be really good to implement now that we're getting into the summer months. And eating foods that are within your constitution. And now normally you hear me say, you know, no cold or raw foods, but in this case here, we want that roughage to help with the digestion. Because it's so hot outside, we want some things to help to cool our heart down as well too. All right, so eating lots of greens and leafy vegetables, making sure that we still have the sweet potatoes and yams in our diet, those types of things, mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, cordyceps, even if it's in the extract form, that's okay. Introducing that into your diet as well. And you know, if you want some of that vitamin D, if you click on the link below, we get our vitamin D from Pure Encapsulations. They're an amazing company, and this is where we get all of our supplements like vitamin D or CoQ10, those types of things. So click on the link below, and we can ship some of that out to you. All right, so We talked about diet, we talked about alcohol, we talked about getting out to be around people, making sure we have enough vitamin D. So what else can we do? Well, Qigong-wise, we could do our liver move, because again, the liver is affected by the emotions of anger, frustration, rage, and resentment, and old anger. And when that old anger is held on to for a long period of time, it turns into depression. So in order to make this exercise work, you need to focus on something that creates anger for you, or if you know you're holding on to depression. You want to feel it, who's involved, what's involved. And then from here, what will happen is that you're going to imagine as you exhale, that anger leaving like a dark cloud, going several feet away from the body and deep into the ground. Okay, so you could do as few as 9 movements or 6 movements of this, or as much as you want. The key though is that you really have to focus. The key is that you really have to focus on the emotion associated with the organ. And in this case here, we're talking about old anger and resentment. All right, so I'm going to allow for the kindness to come in, leaving the anger behind. Then I'm going to inhale and finish. Imagine that green cloud filling up into the liver, and finish off by pulling down the heavens 1 time. Okay, good. Okay, so the kidney exercise, like I said, the kidneys are responsible for helping to keep the heart fire in check. Now, we don't want too much water, meaning a deficiency of yang, which is heat, to move water, which then could cause blockages in the heart as well too. So, but we want to make sure that there's a proper interaction between the water element of the kidneys and the fire element of the heart. So if this kidney essence isn't reaching the heart because we're burning the candles at both ends, not getting enough sleep, or we have some type of PTSD from some kind of event in our life, or something we've seen or witnessed, or maybe we suffered from abuse ourselves. So I'm going to feel that, who's involved, what's involved. Then as I inhale, that blue cloud fills up into the kidneys. Then as I exhale, going to allow for that fear and that shock to leave like a dark cloud. Then I'm going to come to the top, and I'm going to switch. Now going with the left kidney, inhaling, the blue cloud comes up, exhale, and inhale. Allow for that blue cloud to come in. Allow for the fear to leave. The other thing too is making sure to get enough sleep. You know, sleep is the #1 tonic for curing all diseases. And it also helps to recharge the battery of the kidneys. So as the fear and the PTSD and the shock leaves, the positive virtue of kindness, or gentleness actually, and willpower and wisdom comes in. Okay, I can roll the tongue, tip the tongue to the soft palate on the roof of the mouth if I want to connect the internal kidney acupuncture meridian. Okay, and then I'm going to come back to the center here. I'm going to finish off by pulling down the heavens 1 time. Inhale, and then exhale. All right, next exercise is for the lungs. I'm going to inhale, imagine a white or a silver cloud filling up into the lungs. As I exhale, I'm going to imagine the grief and sadness and sorrow, when held on to for a long period of time, could actually cause a stagnation of qi in the chest and the heart, which also will create depression as well. So there's so many different types of mental emotional disorders, and depression is really one of those things, and it's really on the rise right now because we're being placed in situations that are unnatural for us to be in. There's a lot of fear going on, a lot of fear being instilled in the people. And then there's a lot of misunderstanding going on right now, which creates more fear, grief. Okay, so I'm going to imagine that this white cloud fills up into the lungs. Then as I exhale, the dark cloud leaves of grief, sadness, sorrow, disappointment, shame, and guilt, going several feet away from the body, deep into the ground. So you just lost a loved one, or a pet has ran away. Imagine that leaving out the hands. All right, let's do one more. And from here, I'm going to pull in, pressing down, pulling down the heavens 1 time. Inhale. And exhale. Okay, so there you go. Today we talked about depression and how depression plagues so many different people around the U.S., actually around the world, but things that we could actually do in order to help to rectify those imbalances. So if you're somebody who's suffering from depression, my heart goes out to you. Please do this Qigong practice. Check out our other YouTube practices on grief, sadness, sorrow, and loss. And if you know somebody who is suffering from depression or who is having suicidal tendencies, please share this with them as well too, because this is the type of help that we need, especially in this country where mental health is not really addressed. There's really not a lot of tools out there for mental health except for medication. And so when somebody said this to me once before, you know, the thing that we like about you, Chris, is that you give us the choice of either to medicate or to meditate. So it's your choice. Sometimes, though, we do have to do both. Sometimes if the depression is too bad and the person is having suicidal thoughts and feels that there's no glimmer of hope, sometimes medication has to be administered because you have to pull that person off the cliff. Okay, so just because I practice Chinese medicine, I believe it's an integration of East and West, and there is sometimes that you have to administer or have a physician administer medication in order to calm that person down. Meanwhile, we could rectify the diet, we could introduce Qigong practices, we could recommend certain herbs in order to help people uplift their spirits, and then they change the depression and turn that, as my wife always says, turn that frown upside down. So if you're like this, turn it like this, turn it up. So, okay. If you're somebody also that really loves these practices and wants to implement more and go dive deeper, we do have a Qigong teacher training program that's going to be launching on July 7th. Check out the website, click on the link below. Right now we do have a 50% off special. So this program is especially for anybody who wants to dive deeper, but also for those of you that are also practitioners that want to add more to your repertoire of information and tools to help your patients or your clients. If you like these YouTube series and you want to join us live, please sign up for the Qi Club. Click on the link below, and we're teaching Qigong, Tai Chi, a little bit of Pilates and simple yoga stretches from 8 to 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So click on the link below and be a part of a community, because if you're having a hard time developing a Qigong practice for yourself, this little half-hour series amongst the people from around the world that have joined the Qi Club already will help to motivate you, and you'll be part of this consciousness that helps to change the planet. Because really, when it comes back down to it, in order to change the consciousness, it starts with ourselves. In order to change our mindset, then it starts with ourselves, but also being around other people, same kind of energy. So once again, I'm Chris Shelton, signing off from a beautiful day in sunny San Jose, California, the heart of Silicon Valley. Until next time, I will Qi you later.